Coming in at number 5, we've got sewer alligators. Iconic. I think New York's sewer alligators might have been one of the first urban legends I was familiar with as a kid. Showed up as a gag in a show I was watching or something. But it's a myth that doesn't seem to disappear. Hell, it even has an incarnation in one of New York's most famous pieces of media, Spider-Man. The lizard, anyone? There's something about the possibility of gigantic carnivores living in the New York City sewer system that has captured the imaginations of folks everywhere. Unfortunately, it's a story that begins with irresponsible pet ownership. Back in the early 20th century, plenty of posh people were looking for exotic pets to bring home with them. Why you would want an alligator in your penthouse is beyond me, but the rich and frivolous thought this was a smashing idea. Now, we all know this is a bad call, but hindsight wasn't quite a thing yet back then. So these folks brought baby alligators home and made cooing noises at their tiny green pals. However, they don't stay tiny and cute forever, so when these alligators became problematic, it was common for their owners to ditch them in any way they could. Some chose to flush them, but it's likely that they were too big at that point to fit down the pipes. This resulted in many being tossed down into the sewers at ground level. The legend says that these gators managed to do quite well for themselves in the dank tunnels, feasting on rats, growing up, and finding other alligators to have little alligator sewer babies with. This all came to a head in 1935 when the Times ran an article headlined, "Alligator Found in Uptown Sewer." A bunch of folks had located and killed an 8-footer out near the Harlem River, giving credence to the rumors. From there, the legend was cemented into city lore. The actual probability of alligators thriving in the sewers is next to none, but the believers keep on believing. Coming in at number 4, we've got Montauk Mind Control. SCP fans might recognize that name, Montauk. It's a hamlet at the far east end of Long Island. Because of this, it can be interpreted as the end, which kind of makes sense in that context. Stranger Things fans might have their ears perked up right now too, as rumors surrounding this village at the end of the island are basis for some parts of the show. There's an old military base out there known as Camp Hero. It's been shut down for a while, but there are whispers of some sinister stuff happening way back when. All sorts of top secret classified experiments are said to have occurred from the 60s through the 80s. The kind of stuff that would never go public because it's pretty messed up. It's almost sci-fi inspired, to be honest. Being at the end of the island lent them a fair deal of privacy, which meant the folks at the base could get up to all sorts of trouble. The big one that folks talk about has to be psychic experiments. Of course, experimenting on adults is no good. They're already fully developed and likely haven't exercised their psychic abilities. It's rumored that children were kidnapped and brought in and forced to undergo psychic experiments. They were put through all sorts of extreme tests and trials to see if they could unlock their hidden potential. Was it to create a new type of human weapon? Could it have been for the sake of espionage? Did anything really come of it? It really does smack of Stranger Things, doesn't it? An electrical engineer that claims to have worked at the site says they had alien technology there, which allowed them to turn kids into psychic warriors, which is a lot to claim, especially as it opens up the possibility of alien contact. These days, you can visit Camp Hero yourself whenever you want, as it's been converted into a state park. So maybe go and see if you can sense anything, or maybe even find some alien relics. Coming in at number 3, we've got the Empire State Bermuda Triangle. You're all familiar with the actual Bermuda Triangle, right? You know, the mystical portion of ocean between Miami, San Juan, and Bermuda that supposedly disappears ships, planes, and anything else that passes through? Well, apparently there's a spot like that in New York, sort of. If you ask around long enough, you might hear the tale of the Midtown Bermuda Triangle. In 2008, folks started noticing something odd. All sorts of cars would die for seemingly no reason and refuse to start back up again. It happened so often that people started looking for reasons why. Someone made the observation that all of these shutdowns seemed to be happening within 5 blocks of the Empire State Building. Mechanics got used to driving out, towing the dead cars a few blocks, and having them work perfectly once again. There are all sorts of theories as to why this happens, but the prevailing idea is that radio signals coming from the Empire State Building's broadcast tower were causing some sort of interference. Maybe they were inadvertently screwing with car alarm systems, stopping them from starting. However, this problem seems to have solved itself without anyone really addressing what was going on. So, was there a mysterious dead zone around the Empire State Building, or were folks just reading too far into their car troubles? Coming in at number 2, we've got mole people. We started with some underground reptiles, now let's get to some mammals. Humanoid mammals. Deep below the city, among the many subway tunnels and sewer systems, lives a city of people not accustomed to sunlight. Mole people. Well, probably not actual mole people, it's just a nickname they all got for living underground. In all likelihood, there are plenty of people living under New York. There are over 700 miles of subway tracks, plenty of which are closed up, so there's lots of space to set up a subterranean life. Rumors of these people living below the surface date back to the 1800s when the subway was first being built. The city had done its best to prevent people from settling in under there, but that's much easier said than done. Often subway construction gets delayed when workers come face to face with some of the tunnel dwellers. If someone was trying to run a train through your house, you'd be unwilling to move too. And finally, at number 1, we've got Cropsey. Oh, now this one is spooky. A legend among Staten Island youth, Cropsey is a figure shrouded in mystery. Some say that he was a respected member of the community that went mad after his son died. Others claim that he was admitted into a mental institution, became a janitor, and then started to kill. The origin story changes from person to person, but his actions do not. Cropsey kidnaps and kills children. He's the Staten Island boogeyman. Summer camps and island tours galore love to scare the daylights out of folks by telling them the tale of the killer on the loose. There's even a slasher movie from the 80s that features a Cropsey character. It's called The Burning. But get this, the legend might actually be true. Sure, he's not around anymore, but it turns out there really was a mad janitor who kidnapped and killed children. Andre Rand worked at Willowbrook, a now defunct mental institution on the island. In 1987, Rand was convicted of kidnapping and murder and racked up more charges later on. Did he inspire the legend, or was he inspired by it? We may never know. Rand is currently serving 2 sentences of 25 to life, but it's doubtful he's getting out. There's a fascinating and freaky documentary about the story of Cropsey that came out in 2009 that investigates the events surrounding the legend. Right on. The concrete jungle seems a little more cursed than before, doesn't it? Rent prices aren't the only scary thing out there.
Number 5 on this list is the legend of Walhalla Road. Walhalla Road is actually quite a beautiful road in central Ohio. It is very long, starting out as a suburb street and then eventually transitioning into a very skinny one-way road in the middle of what feels like nowhere. As you may expect, our legend takes place in the skinny abandoned one-way section of this road. The story says that in the 1950s there was a couple that lived in a home along Walhalla Road out in the country. Now, no one is really sure what prompted the husband to do this, whether he had just gone insane or if the wife had done something that he did not approve of, but one evening he totally lost it. He grabbed the axe from the garage and brutally murdered his wife in the attic of their home. The whole story gives me some serious Jack Nicholson in The Shining type of vibes. After he had killed her, he took her body and he buried it at nighttime in the yard. Now, they weren't completely in the middle of nowhere and did have some neighbors in the area. After several weeks of not seeing the wife and strange explanations from the husband, the neighbors called the police and the truth was revealed. The man was then easily tried, convicted, and sentenced to execution. After his death, though, people started reporting seeing him around the area. When they reported this, nobody took it very seriously, considering it had been big news when he was sentenced to death and everybody had heard about it. More and more sightings came out though, and it was always the same story. They could see along the side of the road ghostly apparitions of the husband who was killing his wife. Almost as if the scene was getting played over and over and over again. The locals now swear that if you head down that road and get to the one-way, then it's very possible that you will see the ghost of our murderer replaying the killing of his wife. Number 4 on this list is the Lizard Men. Now, this is certainly a strange one, but honestly it's one of the biggest urban legends that Ohio has to offer. The legend can be traced all the way back to 1955, where it was reported that a traveling salesman spotted these strange looking creatures. Now, this story sounds a little bit ridiculous to me if I'm being completely honest, but apparently 3 lizard-like creatures that are roughly 3 feet tall were standing on their hind legs having a full-on conversation. When the man pulled up to them and couldn't believe his eyes, because it's literally these 3-foot lizards talking to each other, they whipped out a magic wand and then used their magic wand to conjure some sparks, which provided them with enough cover to then run away. Now, frankly, that part of the story sounds a lot more like my traveling salesman buddy was dipping a little bit too deep into the drink, or potentially some other illegal substances. But some of the other encounters that people have reported having with these beings aren't quite as outlandish. In 1972, for instance, a police officer was driving his car by the Little Miami River and in his headlights saw a very large creature sprint across the road and leap off a bridge into the river. He was totally blown away and said that the being was nothing like he has ever seen, painting the picture of a unique lizard-like man when he described it. Throughout the years, there have been a lot more sightings of the lizard creatures by Little Miami River, similar to that of the police officer. Up to this point, there haven't been any deaths or harm that has befallen on the people that have come across this creature, or creatures, so it isn't necessarily too scary, but I had to include it on this list simply due to the amount of sightings that people have had and how popular of an urban legend it is to the Ohio locals. Number 3 on this list is the legend of the Hatchet Man. Back in the 1800s, there was a man named Andrew Hellman who owned and operated a cemetery. One evening, Andrew was finishing up his business outside, and he was savagely attacked by an unknown assailant. The attacker had a hatchet and used it to cut Andrew's body up into little tiny pieces. This clearly wasn't enough for the killer though, who then took all of these little bits of Andrew and scattered them around the entire cemetery. Andrew was a nice man and didn't deserve this at all, and he definitely didn't deserve for his soul to get trapped in limbo like it is right now. Legend says that Andrew's spirit still wanders through this cemetery and has completely lost its mind. People have reported hearing the sound of somebody banging a hatchet on gravestones throughout the cemetery, screaming at the top of their lungs as they do it. It has also been reported that they have discovered hatchet scrapings on the tombstones in this cemetery as if somebody had slammed a hatchet on them as hard as they could. Some locals even believe that Andrew's ghost or Hatchet Man is so far gone that it has begun killing people. That if you are out in this cemetery late at night and alone, the Hatchet Man's spirit will appear, and if you see him, then this is the last thing that you will do, because you will be murdered by the Hatchet Man. Number 2 on this list is Crybaby Bridge. In Ohio, there are actually many bridges that people claim are the true Crybaby Bridge. However, when I was doing my research, the one that I heard the most about was a bridge located in Fremont. The urban legend of Crybaby Bridge was a sad one. As I imagine you've probably guessed by now, this legend includes a baby. It's said that many years ago a mother took her newborn to this bridge. The baby that she had just given birth to was unwanted. Now it's unclear why this baby was unwanted. Was she incapable of taking care of it? Was potentially her partner involved in the decision? That part of the story, it's not known. But what is known is that she took the child and she threw it into the river to drown and die. Then, after standing there and seeing her baby drown down the river, the mother threw herself over the top and killed herself the same way. People think that she killed herself out of guilt for what she had just done to her child, and this is why I think there has to have been some external factor that we don't know about forcing her to do it in the first place. Whatever the reason though, the killing of a newborn like that with the amount of guilt and emotion, it leaves something behind. The people of Utah believe that if you go to this bridge in Fremont late at night and wait there, you will start to hear the cries from a newborn baby coming from the waters below. It is also said by the locals that if you stand there long enough, then you may even encounter the phantom form of that mother. She won't cause you any harm, she will only be looking out over the waters, regretting what she had done to her child so many years ago. Number 1 on this list is the portal to hell. Located in Blue Ash, Ohio, the portal to hell is a very eerie looking drain tunnel that was reportedly used by Satanists to open up a gateway straight to hell. The exact story of how the portal was created, it isn't completely concrete, but for the most part, everybody agrees that a satanic group used part of the tunnel as a meeting ground. It was in this tunnel that they started performing their satanic rituals. They reportedly used this place for a lot of sacrifices and would slaughter live animals down there very frequently. This escalated until they made a full-on portal to hell that nobody is closed. People in the area regularly report hearing screaming coming from down inside the tunnel, with others saying that they've seen strange visuals and movements as well. David Scott and John Stevens, who run a show about paranormal activity, got wind of the portal to hell and had to go check it out for themselves to see if the rumors were true. From what they had heard, there was a demon called the Shadow Man that was lurking deep inside the tunnels near the altar room where the Satanists used to sacrifice the bodies. When they go down into the tunnel, for the first bit, everything is as it should be. It's still super creepy tunnel, but nothing paranormal. Then, as they're super deep into the tunnel, they begin to hear footsteps coming from behind them in the darkness. Being paranormal professionals, they pull out this strange looking electronic device and start asking questions to it. Sure enough, a voice comes back to them. They go on to have a full conversation with this voice and learn that a man named Jake was murdered down here. The voice goes on to tell them that the tunnel is a prison and that they must worship Satan here. It also tells them that the Shadow Man is real and is currently down here with them. The conversation finishes with the voice basically claiming that it wants to leave this horrible place and that it is trapped down here. I'm not sure how real their interaction was with this voice, but with the history that this tunnel has had and the amount of people who have had reported sightings of beings and other odd, unexplained things, something is definitely not right about that tunnel, or the portal to hell in Blue Ash, Ohio.
Coming in at 5, Arkansas, the Dog Boy. Now the name may sound ridiculous, yes, but the story is truly chilling. If you find yourself at 65 Mulberry Street in the middle of a small Arkansas town of Quintman, you may very well encounter the hulking outline of a 300-pound, half-man, half-beast with glowing animal eyes. This is the Dog Boy. If you see him, walk quickly, as he is rumored to chase people down the street, biting at their heels, just like a dog. Now, this legend is rare, because the story behind the story may just be even creepier than the legend itself. Gerald Bettis, the only son of the Bettis family of 65 Mulberry, was reportedly a problem child, but not a cute one. No, this kid collected and tortured animals before turning his sociopathic focus to his parents, supposedly imprisoning them in their home and murdering his father. Bettis was eventually imprisoned for growing marijuana on his back porch and would later die in a state penitentiary in 1988 of a drug overdose. Spooky stuff. Coming in at 4, Colorado, Riverdale Road. Riverdale Road near Thornton, Colorado is crammed with horrifying legends to bring even the bravest paranormal investigator to their knees. Riverdale Road is notorious for having some of the most chilling and endless ghost stories, beginning with the fact that it is literally referred to as the gates to hell. Yeah, now the gates themselves are simply made of rusty iron, yet people travel from far and wide to visit them. This is because the man who built the gates lost his mind once they were finished. He then burned his entire mansion with his family asleep inside. Worse still, he was never caught or put on trial. As of now, people report that a lady in white walks the road close by the gates, with many assuming she is the man's wife, wandering, searching for her murdered children or even her husband. Another ghostly story goes that there are accidents that specifically happen to joggers all the time. Once upon a time, a jogger decided to take a jog along Riverdale Road and ultimately got hit. They sadly passed away, and rumor has it their spirit now haunts the road. People who walk the road are said to have heard a loud heartbeat and footsteps. If you drive by, you might also feel something hitting your car when there's literally nothing there. Now, there are so many more stories, but we'll end with the Native American shapeshifters. Now, what makes Riverdale Road interesting isn't just the road itself, but because the area of land that it cuts through is also rumored to be haunted. For hundreds of years, there have been countless stories about Native American shapeshifters roaming the land, with many passers-by spotting them on the road. According to reports, they take on different shapes and communicate with people in their own ways. They're also known to play tricks on anyone who walks down Riverdale Road, so be warned. Coming in at 3, New Jersey, The Watcher. Now, this legend could honestly be the script for a horror movie. Let me break it down for you. A family begin receiving ominous notes just days after they close on their dream home. Yeah, spooky, right? Well, this story took off back in 2015 after a young family moved into a $1 million house in Westfield, New Jersey. However, they began to get letters signed by someone only IDing themselves as the Watcher, who claimed it was their duty to watch over the house, while also spouting weird lines such as, I quote, "Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested?" and "Who has the bedrooms facing the street?" Yeah, creepy. The writer also noted the make of the couple's car and the comings and goings of construction crews. He also observed that the couple had 3 young children, stating, I quote, "Was your old house too small for the growing family, or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me." Now, no one quite knows the truth behind the legend, whether it was a prank or a spooky neighbor, but what we do know is that the Watcher was never caught and still remains watching the house in Westfield, New Jersey. curiosity. Coming in at number 2, California Turnbull Canyon. Turnbull Canyon is a 4-mile loop trail located near Whittier, California, and is part of Puente Hills Preserve. It lies in the northern central part of the preserve and is an east-west canyon with relatively steep drainage. Now natives call Turnbull Canyon Hatunga, or the place of the devil, and is supposedly where the ghosts of those slain for not converting to Christianity dwell alongside witches and Satanists who reportedly used the place to sacrifice children, whose spirits now walk along the canyon. According to other reports, Turnbull Canyon also houses the ghosts of 21 children who perished in a plane crash back in 1952. However, there are no existing records of the incident, so this may be local legend. However, what we do know is real is that in the canyon lies the remains of an old insane asylum that supposedly came back to life to kill a teen in the 1960s via long dormant electrical wire. Not only that, but there are cults, alien encounters, and gravity hills. The list goes on and on. Basically, if something unnerves you, there is probably a story about it going down at Turnbull Canyon. Now, its origin is pretty simple. Turnbull's evil dates back centuries. However, it wasn't until the site was established as a fur trapping site in 1845 that things started to get a little odd, and very quickly word of the canyon's evil terrors spread far and wide, making it one of the world's most visited places, but not for its beauty, but due to morbid curiosity. And finally, coming in at number 1, Virginia, the Bunny Man Bridge. This terrifying urban legend originated from 2 incidents in Fairfax County, Virginia in 1970, but very quickly spread through the Washington DC area as well. Now, like all legends, there are many variations. Most involve a man wearing a rabbit costume who attacks people with an axe or a hatchet. Now, the legend goes that in 1904 a group of convicts were piled onto a bus to be transported from an asylum in Clifton, Virginia to a nearby prison. En route, however, one of the buses crashed and the convicts managed to escape. Thankfully though, the police were able to round up all of them, all but one. As their search went on, they began to find skinned, half-eaten bunnies in the woods and hanging from the overpass of Fairfax Bridge, now known as the Bunny Man Bridge. A year later, on Halloween night, several teens went to hang out under the bridge. Come morning, they were all found dead. Legend has it that if you hang out under the bridge on Halloween night, you will meet the same fate as the rabbits and the teenagers. Jump ahead to 1970, there were numerous police reports of people who had been threatened by a man holding an axe and wearing a white suit with bunny ears. Terrifying. A few other people also reported that the man in the suit threw an axe at them for trespassing near the bridge. To this day, there have been numerous reportings of the man with the axe, as well as the dead rabbits in the woods surrounding Fairfax Bridge, which is now known, once again, as the Bunny Man Bridge. Now, versions of the legend have varied over the years, particularly in the Bunny Man's name, motives, weapons, victims, and description, with some accounts stating that victims were mutilated and others that the Bunny Man is a ghost. However, that aside, the legend is absolutely horrifying and has prevented a lot of Virginia locals from wandering too close to the bridge. In at 5, the Witch Girl of Pilot's Knob. Now, this legend comes to us from Marion, Kentucky, where a young girl is said to be buried in a concrete grave. Back in 1916, a woman named Mary Louise Ford and her 5-year-old daughter Mary Ellen Ford were living in Pilot's Knob. The mother and daughter were accused of being witches, and instead of waiting for the trial, the frightened villagers dragged the mother and daughter out of the house and burned them alive at the stake. Classic witch business. They then buried the mother's body in a different location, and to avoid the young girl coming back from the dead and seeking revenge, the fearful villagers made sure to take precautions. They buried the daughter in Pilot's Knob in a steel reinforced coffin, and then after lowering it into the grave, they filled it with concrete. Following that, they put gravel on top and built a metal fence all around the gravesite. Yeah, they were pretty damn scared. According to legend, the young girl's ghost paces back and forth behind the fence, searching for her mother who was buried somewhere else. Yet she cannot escape the confines of the fence. Many locals have even reported seeing tiny child's footprints in the gravel over her grave, and some believe that if you visit the girl's grave alone and get too close, her hands will come up and grab a hold of you and drag you down into the concrete. Folks who have reported to see her go say that she wears a white dress that is scorched at the bottom and her long blonde hair smolders at the ends. In at 4, the Hanging Man of Allendale Train Tunnel. The Allendale Train Tunnel is located south of Cincinnati in the woods behind the Allendale Trailer Park in Ellesmere, Kentucky. Now, legend goes that some years ago a man hung himself from a hook that is set above the tunnel entrance. The man's ghost is said to walk the tunnel or even appear hanging from the hook. Not only that, but there are also reports of disembodied voices as well as screams coming from inside the tunnel. Now, for those seeking to locate the tunnel, there has been some confusion simply because it's known as a train tunnel, yet no trains run through it. It's actually a tunnel for the stream that runs under the tracks. In order to reach it, you must enter the woods, travel down a hill and follow the stream to reach the tunnel, which is now heavily graffitied and littered. Although in urban legend, one element rings true. There is a hook above the entrance to the tunnel, the clear indicator that you're in the right place. Enjoy. In at 3, the Witch's Tree. On 6th Street and Park Ave in Louisville, Kentucky, you will find what can only be described as a natural monstrosity. A knotted tree, so misshapen and tortured that it could easily serve as a portal to hell. Now, even if the tree itself didn't catch your attention, the trinkets, baubles and bead necklaces hanging from the branches certainly would. They are items that have been placed by the Louisville locals to appease the vengeful witches. Now, the legend of the bizarre tree begins in the late 19th century, where it was supposedly the gathering place for a coven of witches, where they would perform their ceremonies. All was well until a city planning committee decided to remove the tree ahead of the annual May Day celebration. This, of course, displeased the witches greatly, so much so that they cast a curse. Exactly 11 months to the day after the tree was cut down, the city suffered a storm so severe it was assumed by locals that the witches had made good on their curse and summoned a storm demon. Now, during this horrendous storm, lightning struck the stump of the old witch's tree and suddenly a new tree began to grow. However, it was not a healthy tree but rather twisted and otherworldly. Now, whether these stories are true or not, the locals of Louisville believe this tree houses something dark and sinister, and to this day continue to adorn it with baubles and trinkets. In at 2, the Headless Woman of Iroquois Park. Iroquois Park is a 739-acre park in Louisville, Kentucky, designed by Frederick Law Cherokee and Shawnee Parks. It is a serene and picturesque park with an old-growth forest and viewpoint atop the hill. However, as you wander through the forest and the winding trails on a warm night, you may begin to hear the sound of a dog barking wildly. Following that, a thick fog will roll in, partially obstructing your vision. Then, you will smell the stench of smoke and fire begin to rise in the air. The fog will break, but just for a moment, and then you'll see a figure begin to approach. Now, accounts vary, but some state that a woman will appear dressed in early 1800 settlement clothes, and as she walks through the park, you can see her very clearly holding her head in her hands as blood drips from her severed neck. The legend has been passed down from generation to generation, with each new storyteller making it much more gruesome. For those looking for a thrill, it is said that the Headless Woman is regularly seen close to the lookout point, with some suspecting that she is the ghost of a farmer's wife who settled with her husband in the area where the park is now located. The story goes that one night while her husband was downtown on business, an Indian tribe attempted to sneak up on the homestead and ransack it. The intruders grabbed the woman and beheaded her before promptly setting fire to the home. Now, whether you believe this is that very same woman is up to you, but regardless, there have been far too many accounts of parkgoers seeing the Headless Woman for it to be simply legend. And finally, coming in at number 1, the Pope Lick Monster. The Pope Lick Monster is said to be a part man, part goat, and part sheep creature reported to live beneath a railroad trestle bridge over Pope Lick Creek in the Fisherville neighborhood of Louisville, Kentucky. Now, numerous urban legends exist about the creature and its origins, with some accounts claiming that the creature uses hypnosis or voice mimicry to lure trespassers onto the trestle in order to kill them. However, other accounts claim that the creature jumps down from the trestle onto the roofs of cars passing beneath it. No matter what Throughout the story, the creature is so unsettling to those who see it that they are driven to leap off of the trestle. Its origins vary, but some reports state that the human-goat hybrid was a circus freak who vowed revenge after being mistreated. In another version, the monster escaped from a train that was derailed on the trestle. And the final rumor is that the creature is really the twisted reincarnated form of a farmer who sacrificed goats in exchange for satanic powers. No matter which way you spin it, this creature is horrifying and is said to be behind a number of deaths and accidents at the trestle since its initial construction, despite the now looming 8-foot fence built to keep thrill seekers out. In at 5, the Lady in Red in Lower Bay Station. Now, a Lady in Red is a popular theme in many legends and ghost stories, with few popping up across America and Canada. However, this one comes from Toronto, specifically below Bay Station, where another subway station lies, Lower Bay Station. The Toronto Transit Commission reportedly opened the station in 1966 while experimenting with routes, but soon realized that if the route was to become delayed, it would slow down the entire subway system. Therefore, it was shut down just 6 months later. The city later went on to build Bay Station on top of it, connecting the two platforms with a red door that is only accessible to employees. Workers and occasional movie productions still use the old station, however, and it is here that folks have claimed to have seen the Lady in Red wandering the abandoned tracks. People have reported that she has no legs and had only black holes for eyes. Her apparition only lingers for 30 seconds before disappearing. Some believe it to be a woman that was pushed onto the tracks, but no records of any such incident exist. Others think it's more likely she was a former resident of Potter's Field, a cemetery for social outcasts and the poor, which the city attempted to relocate in 1855 to build the station. Coming in at 4, the legend of Gibraltar Point Lighthouse. The Gibraltar Point Lighthouse is located on the Toronto Islands in Toronto. Beginning in 1808, it is the oldest existing lighthouse on the Great Lakes and one of Toronto's oldest buildings. Now, due to its age, this lighthouse is of course shrouded in mystery, specifically regarding its first keeper, J.P. Radamula. According to the legend, soldiers from Fort York visited J.P. on the evening of January 2nd, 1815 in search of his bootlegged beer, but they had too much to drink and a dispute broke out, culminating in the keeper's murder. The inebriated soldiers tried to conceal their crime by chopping apart the corpse and hiding the remains. In 1893, then keeper George Dernan searched for the corpse and found part of a jawbone and coffin fragments near the lighthouse, though it was never definitively proven that they were linked to JP. As one of the oldest legends in Toronto, the truth behind the lighthouse keeper's death and disappearance remains a mystery even to this day, and the legend certainly lives on. Coming in at 3, UFO Encounter in Manitoba. All the way back in 1967, Stefan McCallick ventured into the woods around Falcon Lake near Winnipeg, Manitoba, in search of silver and quartz, when he was startled by a gaggle of geese that erupted into a clattering of honks. According to his own report, he then noticed 2 cigar-shaped crafts hovering in the air before one flew away. However, the other one landed. Stefan stated that he waited half an hour before approaching. He heard mechanical noises, smelled sulfur, and felt warm air as he gradually got closer. As he did, he noticed an open door panel, and coming from within were colored lights and muffled voices that sounded like humming. Then, out of nowhere, the door panel closed, and a blast of gas from the craft knocked Stefan back and off his feet, with his clothes being set ablaze. He managed to take them off and ran into town when he began to feel extremely sick. Doctors quickly discovered that his sickness was caused by radiation, and officials who checked the site also discovered radioactive soil samples and metal melted into the rocks. Now, since then, the son of Stefan has written a book about the ongoing mystery. Stan McCallick, the son of Stefan, has previously stated that he very clearly remembers the day his dad came home sick and injured after something happened to him in the Falcon Lake woods. I quote, "I recalled seeing him in bed. He didn't look good at all. He looked pale, haggard. When I walked into the bedroom, there was a huge stink in the air, like a real horrible aroma of sulfur and burnt motor. It was all around and it was coming out of his pores. It was bad." The book was launched back in 2017 in conjunction with the 50th anniversary of the incident. In at 2, Headless Ghosts in Old Montreal. The historic neighborhood of Old Montreal in Quebec is known to be one of the most haunted places in all of Canada. The city's oldest road, St. Paul Street, is supposedly a walkway for the paranormal at night, with visitors often reporting sightings of ghostly horse-drawn carriages or an apparition of Marie Joseph Angelique wearing the same white robe she had on when she was executed. Not only that, but Mary Gallagher, former Lady of the Night, is reported to appear on William and Murray Streets every 7 years, looking for her head, which was taken off by her one-time best friend. If this doesn't do it for you, you can also head over to the old Montreal graveyards, which are known to be abound with ghostly activity, especially in Mount Royal, North America's largest intact cemetery. Visitors have claimed to see apparitions wandering around the plots at night, as well as hear giggling, creaking, and other eerie noises coming from within the cemetery. More interesting still, some of the ghosts that people have reported seeing include several people who perished on the Titanic, and an often seen Algonquin man who looks over the cliff to the city below. And finally, coming in at number 1, the Cave Monster. One of the most haunting legends to come out of Canada comes to us from my city, Toronto, once again, and supposedly took place in August 1978. It was during this time that a 51-year-old man named Ernest went looking for his missing kitten in a Parliament Street tunnel after crawling into an opening near his apartment building. This is where he described seeing a monster that had grey fur, red eyes, and weighing approximately 30 pounds. Now, if you're not from Toronto, we have a sprawling path system, 28 kilometers of climate controlled underground walkways and shopping. However, what if I told you this wasn't the only underground city we have? Well, as reported by the Toronto Sun in March 1979, about 10 feet into the tunnel that Ernest explored, he spotted a thin, human-like figure some 3 feet tall, with, as previously mentioned, grey fur and slanted orange-red eyes. The creature supposedly hissed at him, stating, get out," before fleeing down a side tunnel. Now, it is possible that Ernest was hallucinating or even lying, although saying that, the way the article was written seems to suggest that Laurie Goldstein, the reporter, believed him. Unfortunately, we'll likely never know what actually happened. When the story broke, the entrance to the tunnel had effectively been blocked off by collapsing concrete. Goldstein no longer remembers where the opening was, making the location virtually impossible to find. However, not long ago, someone online spoke of the underground tunnel that may have brought new light to the mystery. I quote, "There is a small opening to the underground tunnels off Parliament Street in downtown Toronto. The entrance is between 2 apartment buildings and leads to the tunnels via the sewers. The underground city beneath Toronto has its centre beneath Gerrard Street and Church Street. Above this area, strange magnetic effects have been observed. It is believed that underground equipment utilising powerful magnetic fields are responsible for the bizarre equipment failures that often are the cause of these accidents." Well, now we know the tunnels are real, do you believe the monster is? You decide. Coming in at 5, Arlington's Screaming Bridge. Now, this Texas legend will quite honestly make your hair stand on end. Legend has it that one full night more than 50 years ago, several teens were carpooling home after their high school football game. Still riled up over the victory, driving responsibly definitely wasn't of utmost importance to the young teens. The bridge running through Arlington's River Legacy Park was just wide enough for one car at a time. You can probably guess where this is going. The teens hooting and hollering drowned out all the noise, like that of a vehicle that had no working headlights. The cars collided head-on before erupting in a fiery explosion and plunging into the waters below. Nobody survived. The bridge is now closed to vehicular traffic, with the site only accessed on foot. However, it now has a new name gifted to it by locals, Screaming Bridge, a name which was coined after the first brave souls went exploring along the bridge and experienced events that can only be explained by the supernatural. Legend has it, if you stand on the bridge and gaze into the river below, you'll see a tombstone for each of the deceased with their names, date of birth, and death. Visit at midnight on the anniversary and you'll hear 2 cars screeching towards each other before colliding. Coming in at 4, the nurse at Bexar County Hospital. If you ever find yourself in Texas, whatever you do not find yourself at the dilapidated Bexar County Hospital, because it is supposedly housing the spirit based on an American serial killer called Janine Jones. Now, the real-life killer is responsible for the deaths of up to 60 infants and children in her care as a licensed vocational nurse during the 1970s and 1980s. In 1994, she was convicted of murder and was sentenced to 99 years in prison with triple credit. Now, the legend of the nurse at Bexar County Hospital has similar treading, with legends stating that a murderous spirit used to wander the halls killing patients in order of their room number, first 201, then 202, 203, 204. It began in one ward where patients all began asking about one particular nurse. However, when the staff checked the security camera, they found the patients speaking to seemingly no one. They saw the curtains close on their own, tracheotomy tubes get pulled out by an unseen force, but then, very quickly, the patients began dying in their room number order. Like I said, many Bexar County locals believe the legend to be based off of Janine Jones, but what do you guys think? Coming in at 3, Summit Elementary School. In Amarillo, Texas, there's a haunting legend surrounding a closed and abandoned school that everyone avoids. The Summit Elementary School is one of the most haunted locations in all of Texas, and its dark history makes it a hub for ghosts and spirits alike. The school was open up until 1972 and is haunted for numerous reasons, including a janitor who killed students and stuck them in the boiler, racially motivated murders that took place in the school, and murdered prostitutes hidden in the walls. These are just a few of the legends surrounding the terrifying building. Worse still, legend has it that if you're brave enough to visit the abandoned school at night, your car may do strange things. Swings will move by themselves and you might even hear voices coming from the walls. Honestly, this school is beginning to sound like the one from Marianne, which is a French horror series you all need to watch immediately. Do it. The Queen demands it. Coming in at 2, the Candy Lady. Now, this very well might be one of the scariest urban legends I've ever read and may result in a lot of you sleeping with the light on tonight. Sorry in advance. This theory goes, I quote, "The Candy Lady allegedly lures children to their doom by leaving enticing goodies on their windowsills just before bedtime. Her plan is for the kids to wait for mum and dad to fall asleep before indulging in the sweet treats so as not to get in trouble. Afterwards, she'll grab them and feast on their sugar-laden blood until there isn't any left. Children began to go missing, yet no leads were ever found that would suggest they were kidnapped or ran away. As some of the remaining children got older, they confessed to eating candy left on their windowsills with a note from the Candy Lady, so parents started to wonder if the other children perhaps had been poisoned. The worry was soon put to rest when someone actually turned up dead. Not a child though, but a sheriff's deputy who had been investigating the disappearances. His eyes had been stabbed out with a fork, and his pockets stuffed with candy. A farmer also found a child-sized set of teeth inside a candy wrapper one morning while tending to his fields. Very creepy. The legend still remains in Texas, and whenever children go missing, people are very quick to blame the Candy Lady. And finally, coming in at number 1, BlackEyed Children. BlackEyed Children or BlackEyed Kids are a contemporary legend of supposed paranormal creatures that resemble children between the ages of 6 and 16 with pale skin and black eyes who are reportedly seen hitchhiking or are encountered on doorsteps of residential homes. Now, children are creepy already. They say strange things and their innocence allows them to breach the barrier between the living and the dead that we jaded adults just don't possess. However, the BlackEyed Children legend is one for the history books and is downright terrifying. In the late 90s, a journalist named Brian Bethel was working in his town of Abilene, Texas, when he encountered something he'll never forget. He was parked outside a movie theater when 2 children knocked on his window. Brian couldn't quite understand why, but he was completely overcome with fear at the sight of them. He rolled down the window regardless, and the kids asked him for a ride back to their home so that they could get cash for the movie. His fear, however, made him hesitate, but the children were persistent. They then began to say some weird things, like, "We're not armed" or anything. Brian looked back at the kids and noticed how their eyes had turned pitch black. They then began screaming at him that they could only come in the car if he invited them in, so he quickly drove away. He spread the word about the BlackEyed Children and was surprised when a lot of other people came forward reporting similar experiences. Coming in at number 5, Baranov Castle. Now, I should begin by saying that Alaska doesn't have any actual actual castles, however it used to. It was the Baranov Castle and was home to many Russian governors in the 1800s. As of today, what remains is the hill the castle stood upon, and the gorgeous hill that spirits now reside on. Now the castle has a history spanning far longer than Alaska has been a part of the USA, which I guess isn't that long to be fair. Even before the castle was abandoned, tales of a mysterious ghost of a lady in dark clothing had become a local legend. It was supposed that she was a Russian aristocrat who had committed suicide on her wedding night after marrying a man she did not love. Now she walks Castle Hill and sometimes the Russian bishop's house nearby. She is also said to be draped in diamonds and a long black veil. She is said to be out most often at the midnight hour, aren't they all? And you may catch a glimpse of her bemoaning her fate. The area is known as Castle Hill in Sitka, and the site remains a popular tourist attraction. However, that is mostly due to the supernatural elements surrounding the mound. Would you dare step foot on Castle Hill? I dare you. In at number 4, Christmas Town. There's quite literally a city in Alaska called North Pole, where it is Christmas all year round. Which is a dream come true, I want to live there. However, this quaint Christmas town has a notorious reputation. In 2006, the snowy little suburb of Fairbanks was hit with a horrific incident when a group of 6 middle school students were arrested for plotting a Columbine-style mass murder at their school. The 7th graders planned to knock out North Pole Middle School's power and telephone systems, then move systematically through the school, shooting and murdering the teachers, as well as students who picked on them. Absolutely horrible. Now their plan would have moved forward if it weren't for an anonymous student who overheard their plans and reported them to the authorities. Thank God. It turned out that at least 6 students had knowledge of the plot too, but had failed to inform anyone about the potential killing spree. Seems now that Christmas Town has an awful legend surrounding it, with many movies based on the town depicting it as something rotten and dangerous, maybe even haunted. Coming in at number 3, the Alaska Triangle. The Alaska Triangle, oftentimes called Alaska's Bermuda Triangle, is a place in the untouched wilderness of the frontier state where a large number of people have gone missing. The triangle connects Anchorage, Juneau, and Barrow, with the latter being a small town on the state's north coast, and has some of North America's most unforgiving wilderness. Now the triangle began attracting attention back in October 1972, when a small private plane carrying US House Majority Leader Hale Boggs, Alaska Congressman Nick Begich, and aide Russell Brown, and Bush pilot Don Johns vanished into thin air while flying from Anchorage to Juneau. Following the incident, more planes began to go down, as well as hikers going missing. Even Alaskan residents and tourists seemed to just vanish into thin air without any explanation. Since 1988, more than 16,000 people have disappeared in the Alaska Triangle, with a missing person rate at more than twice the national average, which is absolutely terrifying. Why aren't we talking about this? Now, the disappearances are often blamed on everything from severe weather to aliens to swirling energy vortexes to an evil shape-shifting demon of Tlingit Indian lore called Kushtaka. Absolutely insane, but I respect these theories. Honestly, it's probably just the weather, but you're cool. In at number 2, Saberwolf. Legend has it that Inuits described a wolf-like evil spirit of the Nahanni Valley that kills people by biting their heads off. In some reports, the animal had long saber-toothed fangs and weighed upwards of 600 pounds, all of which they would use to hunt and kill their prey. The so-called monster has been spotted in Alaska at least once by an American mechanic, who described it as a wolf on steroids, as well as the crew of an American TV show, Alaska Monsters, who claim to have an encounter with the beast. However, there may be an historical answer for the beast. Way back when, there was an animal called the direwolf that lived up until the most recent ice age. Thanks to research, science tells us that this wolf averaged about 100 to 150 pounds and was first thought to be predecessors to dogs as well as the grey wolf. The direwolf had bone-crushing jaws. However, archaeological evidence suggests it was a scavenger as well as a hunter. However, whether they still exist today, no one has a definitive answer, so perhaps it is a direwolf folks have been spotting, or maybe it is a saber wolf. What do you guys think though? Could just be a wolf. And finally, in at number 1, the abandoned copper mine. This abandoned copper mining camp is a National Historic Landmark district that became a bustling mining camp filled with miners and their families. Now, in 1925, a geologist predicted that the area would soon be mined out, and he was correct, because by 1938 Kennecott was a ghost town, and as of today is a popular tourist attraction. Now, more interesting still, in the Kennecott mines, it was not gold that folks were digging for, but instead copper. After copper was discovered in 1900 in the area, a group of wealthy investors formed the Kennecott Copper Corporation to mine the incredibly rich copper before, of course, it was abandoned along with the railroad, which was eventually abandoned due to the cost of constantly changing its position across a nearby glacier, and the mining camp in turn became a ghost town, a very haunted ghost town at that. According to reports, the spectral phenomena in the area, which included tombstones appearing and then vanishing along hiking trails, sounds of crying children, and poltergeist activity, was enough to drive away state government workers who were trying to redevelop the area into government housing projects during the 1990s. Yikes. If you want to venture into the supernatural realm, you can, with the abandoned mine offering tours for those brave souls.
Coming in at number 5, we've got the Magalin Monster. If you've ever taken a drive up the 87, you might have come across a set of very colorful, very large footprints tracked across the highway. While these particular prints were put there by people, they are in homage to the Magalin Monster, aka Arizona's answer to Bigfoot. This big beastie lives along the Magalin Rim and has been seen from Prescott all the way to Clifton. Sightings of the monster date back to early as 1903, with plenty of reports of video, tracks, and hair samples appearing since. People claim that the Magalin Monster is a bipedal humanoid towering over most at 7 feet tall, leaving behind 22-inch footprints. Like most ape-like beasts in the woods, it has crazy strength and some wild eyes. Some claim it's covered in long black hair, others say it's reddish-brown. Maybe it changes with the seasons, or maybe there's more than one. The Magalin Monster is also known for smelling really, really bad. Like dead fish, skunk, BO, peat moss, and snapping turtle musk. I'd hide out in the woods if I smelled like that too. Part of the reason why it's so rarely sighted is that it tends to be active at night. It will hunt and gather all sorts of different foods under cover of darkness and make little nests for itself. If you stumble across one of these pine needle refuges, get the hell out of there. This beefy monster is known to be very territorial and very violent. It reportedly likes to decapitate deer and other wildlife before digging in, and if it can pull the dome off a deer, it can pop your top off like a bottle of Coke. Be careful if you hear any weird noises too, because the Magalin Monster likes to mimic other wildlife. Birds, coyotes, it is even reported to shriek like a woman in distress. So don't go running off to save the damsel, because you might find yourself face to face with a very hairy hunter. Tie up your supplies if you're camping too, as the monster will rummage through stuff left out.
You know, they were all about the hairy man or the wild man or something like that. And of course I didn't believe them.
This, says Wade, is a small baby Bigfoot trying to hide in the corner from his night vision camera.
Coming in at number 4, we've got El Chupacabra. Ah, the Southwest classic. Such a strange creature, the Chupacabra. Is it an alien? A demon dog? Something else? Also known as the goat sucker, these cryptids love to feed on livestock, attacking in the night. Farmers and other animal owners have often found these creatures totally hollowed out following particularly dark nights. Common features of the Chupacabra attacks are a complete lack of blood and puncture wounds in the neck and hindquarters. The wounds are always super clean, no signs of struggle or messiness. Sometimes there are weird injuries too. Cattle often have their anuses cored out, and somehow, even with these brutal injuries, no blood is found. Do the goat suckers inject some sort of sedative? Do they have magical powers? We may never know. One theory is that they have wings and descend on their prey and drain them before they have time to react. This would also explain the lack of tracks that accompany Chupacabra attacks. Although, if they were so quick and clever, wouldn't they also attack humans? Maybe our blood just doesn't taste as good. Now, this legend didn't start in Arizona, but now it's quite prevalent. El Chupacabra seems to have originated in Puerto Rico and made its way into Latin America, eventually spreading to the southwestern states. Now you'd be hard-pressed to find an Arizonan without some sort of Chupacabra story. Tucson resident Billy Nubian claims that he saw one attacking his goats late one night. He was startled awake by the panic sounds of his goats bleeding. Running outside to investigate, he saw a huge rat-like creature pinning one of his goats. It then turned to face Billy, let out a blood-curdling scream, and ran off into the dark. Sarah A. has a similar story where she encountered a half-man, half-ape creature crouching frog-style in her yard. Freaky. Coming in at number 3, we've got Skinwalkers. These Navajo legends have been sighted all over, but have quite a reputation in Arizona. Medicine men possessed by spirits having to choose between good and evil. Often hermits being exiled from their communities. They take the forms of many animals and travel through the wastes. If driving through the arid desert at night wasn't unsettling enough, just wait until you hear about what skinwalkers like to do. Often they'll travel alongside lone vehicles in the dark, even when the car is hoofing it. They'll tap on the windows of the vehicle, trying to get the driver's attention. If the driver stops to see what's going on and gets out of their car, it's not likely that they're coming back. Yikes. There are some hot spots that locals try to avoid at night. Apparently there's a ranch that has been given the name Skinwalker Ranch, thanks to the huge amounts of reports made, and San Carlos Reservation is also a place most will warn you away from during the night. Although most forests at night have their fair share of spooky denizens. There's one tale of a man camping alone that really makes you question whether a little adventure is worth it or not. He was hiking along with his dog and found an empty cave to set up camp in. As he unpacked his stuff, he noticed some unsettling cave paintings along the walls. Later that same night, he was woken up by his dog ferociously barking. As he sat up to see what was the matter, he saw a malformed creature slinking near the entrance of the cave. Acting quickly, he shot at it with his rifle, but this only stunned the creature. It called out to him, saying that it wanted to help. Sure. At this point, the man grabbed his dog and hightailed it out of there, leaving all his stuff. He hasn't gone back since. Hopefully he didn't leave anything too valuable behind, although he did escape with his dog and his life, which are valuable enough. Coming in at number 2, we've got the Haunted Antique Mall. Back to Tucson for more terror and troubles, there's an old 2-story furniture store that was converted into an antique mall of sorts. You know the kind, set up like a flea market with all sorts of independent booths selling their wares. Well, one day customers were walking around upstairs looking at the assorted antiques and they heard some clicking noises. One particularly curious antiquer decided to investigate and found the source. An old typewriter. The thing is, no one was around to operate it. The customers who had heard the typing were the only people upstairs. After that, more and more ghostly tales appeared. Furniture that was left neat and tidy at closing would be strewn throughout the aisles the next morning. Radios would increase in volume with no one around. Employees found themselves frozen in place from time to time, experiencing a distortion of time. They would be stuck there as customers passed by in fast or slow motion. Apparitions would appear all over, sometimes appearing as a grinning boy, other times as a mischievous-looking teenager. Nobody knows who these wraiths belong to. After hearing loud crashing noises upstairs but finding nothing displaced, the owners decided it was time to close down the upper level. Now, considering that all sorts of people were bringing in antiques from different sources, it is possible that all these ghosts came from haunted objects. Or it could be that the furniture store itself is haunted. Nobody's come up with concrete proof of the hauntings, but if you ever find yourself antiquing in Tucson, watch out for paranormal activity. And finally, at number 1, the ghosts of Slaughterhouse Canyon. I mean, the name of this canyon should be enough to give into its bad news. Let me say it again. Slaughterhouse Canyon. Come on. The tale that accompanies the terrifying name comes from the gold rush back in the 1800s. A young family moved out to try their hand at striking it rich. However, this plan did not go very well. Soon they were hungry and destitute. The father would often head out for days, searching for food to sustain him and his family. Tragically, one day he never returned. Without the father to keep them fed, the family slowly starved. As their bodies wasted away, so too did their minds. Eventually, the mother couldn't take it anymore. Her children's cries were too much for her to bear. She donned her wedding dress and ritualistically killed her children. Carrying the corpses down to the nearby river, she wept and screamed. After she dropped their bodies into the water, she wandered around until succumbing to starvation soon after. This sad story forever marred the reputation of Slaughterhouse Canyon. Now, if you visit at night, you might be able to hear the pained cries of the murderous mad mother. Tragic and terrifying. Coming in at number 5, we've got Ogopogo. Let's start with a famous one. Move over, Nessie. We've got a Canadian sea cryptid to discuss. If you've ever been to British Columbia, you'll know that there are plenty of mountains and lakes to explore. One of the more well-known ones, both for its picturesque qualities and supposed housing of a monster, is Lake Okanagan. Situated in Kelowna, this lake is famous for its vacation-friendly beaches. But if you head out looking for a relaxing day on the water, you might meet up with a strange beast. Sightings of the Ogopogo date back to 1972, but indigenous legends have been telling tales of the creature for much longer. It's described as a long, slender creature with many humps and a horse head that peeks out of the lake during thunderstorms. Sound familiar? While not nearly as famous, Ogopogo is quite similar to Nessie when you get down to it. Both are aquatic, hard to find, and attract all sorts of cryptid hunters. All sorts of folks have claimed to see Ogopogo swimming around, popping its head out of the water from time to time. Photos and videos are common, but none are really verifiable or convincing. Thankfully, the creature seems to be relatively friendly. For all these sightings and rumors, there haven't been too many claims of violence or aggression from the lake-dwelling beast. In fact, it's actually quite well liked by everyone. In the 90s, the Canadian government commissioned a postage stamp in honor of Ogopogo. Way to go. Skeptics all have their explanations for what it might actually be, with one prevalent idea claiming that it's actually a primitive whale that only comes out during calmer seasons. Regardless of whether it's real or not, what's more fun to say in the end? Nessie or Ogopogo? I'll let you guys decide. Coming in at number 4, we've got the University of Toronto Phantom Worker. If a film is being shot in Toronto, you're more than likely going to catch a glimpse of U of T's campus. The school's buildings are ornate and beautiful, perfect for giving a scholarly feel to any scene. A lot of the buildings have facades that date back to the early 19th century, giving them a timeless feel. Of course, with any buildings that have been around so long, there will be ghost stories. Back in the 1920s, U of T built a Gothic memorial to honor students who had died during the First World War. During construction of this elaborate memorial, many workers were hired to help out. Legend says that one of the workers fell from the tower while polishing the bells, a true Hunchback of Notre Dame moment. Ever since that fateful incident, students and faculty alike have claimed to see the ghost of the worker wandering around campus. Some even claim that there have been ghostly apparitions falling from the tower. Folks who don't know the legend will run to see if the poor fellow is okay, but never find a body. So much for being a good Samaritan. There are many other ghost stories surrounding the university as well, but none so stomach-dropping. Stonemasons with murderous qualities, little girls lost in planetariums, and a baker who managed to trap his mistress inside a secret room. The stories are real, but are the ghosts still haunting the campus? I suppose you'll have to pay the institution a visit and find out. Just try not to get roped into paying tuition, alright? That's scarier than any ghost story. Coming in at number 3, we've got the Nunner Look. We've talked about urban legends from the far west coast and the most populous city, so now let's take a trip out east. Known for its quaint, peaceful charm, Newfoundland is the last place you'd expect to find terrifying urban legends, right? I mean, you can get screeched in and end up with a scary hangover and only a faint memory of your previous night, but that's something else entirely. The monster seen near Newfoundland dwells in the sea, but does so unconventionally. How do you think sea monsters usually get around? By swimming, right? Well, this thing acts a little differently than most. First sighted by Sir Humphrey Gilbert back in the 16th century, it was described as a lion-like creature. This fits the description of an Inuit cryptid known as the Nunner Look. Legends of such a creature have been passed down through generations of people, but it was considered just a legend to outsiders until Sir Humphrey Gilbert came across it himself. The Nunner Look is a gigantic beast estimated to be as tall as an iceberg. It's got white fur, huge ears, and loves to eat anything that gets close enough. Seals are the classic meal, but it won't turn down a human if they get close. Now, back to that bit about movement. The Nunner Look doesn't swim, it walks along the bottom of the ocean. Yep, not the most efficient way to get around, but it gets the job done. Imagine watching a gigantic beast just walk out of the sea towards you. This is also the reason why people say that it's not really ever seen away from shore. It makes sense considering how deep the ocean is. But if you ever spot a little antenna poking out of the water, it's time to get a move on. And if you ever hear a deafening roar, it's probably too late. Coming in at number 2, we've got the Cabbagetown Tunnel Monster. We'll return to Toronto for a moment, you know, because of the urban qualities of these legends. Get it? Well, every tunnel system has its fair share of legends, and the Cabbagetown Tunnel is no exception. I'm surprised nobody's gone back and tried to get footage of this strange creature. Back in the 70s, a kitten ran away from home. While searching for his lost feline, a man came across a tunnel in Cabbagetown. Thinking that the kitten might have run in here to hide, he descended down into the abyss. Scanning the darkness for any sign of the little animal, he noticed some motion off to the side. Thinking it might be what he was looking for, the man pointed his flashlight at the movement and saw something he was definitely not expecting, neither cute nor cuddly. He claims to have seen a monkey-like creature with glowing orange eyes standing at half the height of a man covered in gray fur. If that horrible sight wasn't enough, listen to this. The man froze up and kept his light trained on the monster. The monster didn't like this much and told the man in an awful, trembling voice, "Go away. Go away." And guess what the man did next? He hightailed it out of there and didn't look back. This story made its way around for a while, but nobody ever properly looked into it. That is, until a year later. The man's friend had convinced him to share his story, so he went to the Toronto Sun with the scoop. A reporter accompanied him back to the tunnel, and they both scoured the inside. Looking around, they didn't find any evidence of a monster, but they did discover the remains of a cat. Some speculate that the tunnel leads to a point in the Toronto sewer system, and others have different ideas. Either way, nobody has seen the Cabbagetown sewer monster since. Would you go looking? Finally, at number 1, we've got the ghost ship of Northumberland Strait. Heading back east for a moment, let's consider the Northumberland Strait. This is a body of water that separates Prince Edward Island from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. It's said that there is a ghost ship that sails upon the strait, more often than not totally engulfed in flame. The legend dates back over 200 years and always seems to play out the same way. Folks on land will look out to see a beautiful schooner with pure white sails. As they look on, these sails will catch fire and the whole ship starts burning. Often people will head out on rescue missions only to find that there was never a ship to begin with. Legend says that the ship will only appear before a northeast wind, predicting a storm. So where does this ghost ship come from, and why does it always come back? Well, some people believe that the ship was captained by a pirate who made a deal with the devil. The ship had been fired upon and was burning fast. He wanted his treasure hidden and protected, so he signed the pact and sealed his fate. Now he and his crew are doomed to sail forever on this perpetually burning ship. Yikes. Now, skeptics will tell you that the ghost ship is simply a mirage, but if that were the case, then how do they explain the flames? How very Canadian, eh? I'm glad my homeland has some legends that can stack up against the big ones from other nations. There are plenty more where that came from too. Any real Canadian remembers reading all sorts of real Canadian ghost story books after scholastic fairs.
In at number 5, we have Space Mountain. There are a surprising amount of urban legends surrounding this ride at Disney World, which is odd. It is just a ride after all, right? Nothing strange about it. According to legend, one rider was decapitated while on Space Mountain because he supposedly stood up while riding. What an idiot. Now, this is only a little bit true. There was a decapitation, but it was on a test dummy, not a real person. No person has ever been killed while riding Space Mountain. However, there is another dark legend that surrounds this ride. According to legend, on Space Mountain you can find Mr. One-Way. Some accounts describe Mr. One-Way as a red-haired man with a red face, with stories stating that he hangs out in the line for Space Mountain. But this differs depending on who you ask. According to video footage, Mr. One-Way will sometimes get onto the ride with other passengers, grabbing an available seat. However, it is said that he disappears right before you reach the final tunnel at the end of the ride. On top of that, there is supposedly a second ghost called Disco Debbie, who is also said to haunt Space Mountain, and according to some riders, she glows in the dark. Very freaky indeed. Coming in at number 4, we have Magnolia Creek Lake. Magnolia was once a thriving riverport town in southern Wakulla County, Florida, which was established all the way back in the 1820s and is now classified as an extinct city by the State Library and Archives of Florida. All that remains of the city is a cemetery, with the last known burial being back in 1859. Magnolia Creek Lane is a narrow road fit for one car at a time south of Montverde on the west side of Lake Apopka. According to legend, the road and surrounding lake is haunted by around 200 passengers who were killed in a train wreck. However, many have attempted to find evidence of this, but none has ever been found, yet the legend continues. Now, while the road appears to be built on an old train track, the only documented railroad runs slightly north of the location. Now, this road is supposedly where all kinds of horrible things happened back in the 1890s, and according to some locals, at the creek that runs to Lake Apopka, you can hear the loud screams in the woods. However, when you get closer, they move farther away. The screams are said to be that of the train crew that died. However, skeptics believe this is actually sound that is being reflected from another place. According to a local, Michelle, she said, I quote, "My cousin went to Montverde Academy and heard about this road that runs off 455 that used to be a railroad bed. And they say that if you go down there at night, you can hear ghostly sounds and see eerie shadows of people walking on the road. I don't know for sure about this because I never went there, so it is just what I heard." Coming in at number 3, I-4 Dead Zone. Interstate 4 is a highway in Florida that spans 132 miles, with it running from Tampa all the way to Daytona Beach. Now, the interstate is frequented daily by folks heading to work and those on their way to Disney World. Now, while it is a popular highway, it is also another nickname for it, the Dead Zone, an area where folks need to be particularly careful. This area of the highway has been the location of many accidents, electronic malfunctions, as well as supposed ghost sightings. So why exactly is this spot so dangerous and filled with so much paranormal activity? Well, this is because this quarter mile of highway was built over a gravesite, and as we know from movies, a disturbed gravesite means bad news bears. It means you're in for a nasty surprise. It means you're gonna die. Don't believe it? Well, oddly enough, on the very first day the new interstate was opened, a tractor trailer carrying frozen goods lost control and crashed directly above the disturbed graves of people who had died from yellow fever. It is believed that around 1,500 to 2,000 accidents have occurred on the highway since 1963, which is a lot. And worse still, many of those accidents resulted in death, and between a 24-month period, there were around 44 car accidents, resulting in approximately 65 5 people being injured. Some locals fear this area of the highway so much that they actually take a much longer route around it. On top of all of this, back in the 1950s, a young boy was said to have disturbed the graves, and the following night he was killed by a drunk driver. And to add insult to injury, the driver was never caught. Coming in at number 2, we have the Devil's Chair, also known as the Haunted Chair. This is an urban legend hailing from folklore that is attached to a class of funerary or memorial sculpture common throughout the United States during the 19th century. Now, these chairs were known as the mourning chairs for visitors to cemeteries to sit on when visiting loved ones. However, since then, cemeteries have provided benches for similar purposes. Once the original purpose of these chairs fell out of fashion, superstition quickly developed in association with sitting in the chair. For example, some young people dare one another to visit the site, most often after dark or at midnight, or in some cases on Halloween. Stories state that if you sit in the chair at these specific times, something awful will happen, with people fearing that they will be punished. In Florida specifically, the Devil's Chair is located in Cassadaga, Florida, and is a graveside bench in the cemetery that borders Cassadaga as well as Lake Helen. According to legend, an unopened can of beer left on the chair will be empty by morning. Now, in some stories, the can has already been opened, and in others, the liquid is simply gone through the unopened top. On top of that, it is said that the devil will sometimes appear to anyone bold enough to sit in the chair itself. So if you do decide to visit the chair at night and take a seat expecting to meet the devil, just be sure to have a beer in hand ready for him, because it is said that he will be expecting one. As am I, all the time. I would like a beer. Maybe that's why I'm evil. I'm the devil. And finally, coming in at number 1, Legend of the Skunk Ape. Also known as the Swamp Cabbage Man, Swamp Ape, Stink Ape, Florida Bigfoot, and Louisiana Bigfoot, this is a creature that is said to inhabit Florida and is named for its appearance and for its unpleasant odor that is said to accompany it. The ape has supposedly been a part of Florida folklore since the settler period, which is absolutely insane. One of the first reports of the skunk ape in Florida came from the year 1818, when a report spoke of a man-sized monkey or ape raiding stores and stalking fishermen. This became particularly common in the 60s and 70s, with one sighting occurring in 1974, which spoke of a large, foul-smelling, hairy ape-like creature, which was said to run upright on 2 legs in the neighborhood of Dade County, Florida. However, some people were skeptical, including investigator Joe Nickel, who stated that these reports may represent a black bear, and that the sightings may in fact be hoaxes or misidentification of wildlife. In terms of appearance, the creature is said to resemble the Sasquatch of the Pacific Northwest. However, the skunk ape is said to be shorter in comparison. It has long patches of fur on the shoulders and arm and is often described as a mottled rusty red color as opposed to the Sasquatch's brown and black coat.